Welcome back to the podcast. And today I'm excited. I've got Kelly Nolan on the podcast. She's an attorney turned time management strategist, and she's a mom of two. She empowers other professional working women to manage their personal, family, and career roles with less stress and more calm using her realistic time management system called the Bright Method. And the Bright Method has been featured in Bloomberg Business Week, and Kelly's work has been published in Forbes, Fast Company, Insider, and Parents. And Kelly hosts the Bright Method podcast, which is awesome. Most importantly, the Bright Method works for real women. And we are real women here on the podcast, helping them manage it all with more clarity, less stress, and the confidence to hold boundaries at work and at home. And I'm thrilled to have Kelly here today because my organized engineering brain loves this topic and it shows up in the vast majority of my coaching sessions that I do with my midlife ladies. So welcome to the podcast, Kelly.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Awesome. I'm really excited to hear about the Bright Method. So, first of all, why did you even create it? What happened that you started this whole thing?
Sure thing. So I thought I wanted to be a lawyer since sixth grade, and I went on my little path to become a lawyer. Never thought I'd run my own business or anything like that. And throughout that time, I was decently organized. I used a paper planner, used my to-do list, got pretty far in life all the way through law school. And then I became an actual practicing attorney, and I quickly got very overwhelmed. And it was a new feeling, a very unwelcome feeling. I remember feeling like everybody had gotten this like how to adult memo that I hadn't. And I really struggled with that. And slowly over time, I started piecing together my own time management system after I'd tried a lot of time management advice that was out there. This was around 2011. And at the time, a lot of the time management advice was, just candidly by white men out there who had a very different home setup in terms of support than I did. And so I tried a lot of their advice and it just never really stuck and gave me traction. So I started building my own weird time management system and then kept practicing law. I thought that my system was catching me up to where everybody else was. And so I just kept practicing law. And it wasn't until years later that I realized, oh, other people feel the way I had felt and are interested in learning this. And so that's how now what I call the Bright Method came to be and how I got to teach it now in this really fun business that I love.
I love it. And I'm just interested in the title, even the Bright Method. How did that come up? Why do you call it
Well,
that?
I am not great at branding. I think my first six programs I called my group program. And but at some point I just had always loved the idea of the Bright Method because to me what I strive for and what I think about the method is that it's a realistic time management system for bright women seeking bright lives. I love the idea of I think there can be a lot of shame around when women struggle with this stuff. And I will say that, I think of myself as an early bloomer. I think a lot of people kind of have some sort of tipping point where the systems that got them far just suddenly aren't giving them the clarity and peace of mind they want. It can be, you know, a new job, it can be a new baby, it can be a second baby, it can be a health issue, it can be a whole lot of different things that tip people over. And I think that when that happens, there can be a lot of confusion and a lot of shame, as I said. That's how I felt that I was like, why can't I handle this anymore? And to me, what I want to convey is that it's not a character flaw, it's a system failure. And you are smart for doing something to switch up your system to have life feel the way you want it to feel again. And that's why I love the bright concept that you are smart to do this and life can feel bright again. And like, let's get you there.
I love that. I appreciate that you said that it's not a flaw, it's a system failure. I think that's such an important thing to remember because I think as women, we do tend to blame ourselves a lot of the time. And especially when it comes to this, especially when it comes to not being able to handle everything.
Yeah.
And I know, especially for my midlife ladies, on top of that, this time of life, we're also dealing with the changing body and
Yeah.
things are changing. Our minds are changing, our bodies are changing. And you throw this into the mix, for sure. We're struggling sometimes, but we're not
Yeah.
alone. This is not something that It's not a flaw. You're
Yeah.
not wrong or bad or anything.
Yeah.
You're not to blame.
And you don't have to stay there. I mean, it doesn't mean that it's an easy fix, but it's also, I think, it's really hard to be like, is this what life is going to be like now? And
Mhm.
I think it just can, be really empowering to realize it doesn't have to be.
Yeah, I think that is empowering. And so what is the Bright method? What are the steps in the Bright method?
Yeah, so high level, what it is it's relying and leveraging a digital calendar, whether that's Google, whether that's Outlook, whether it's Apple, whether it's a combination. Some people are in Outlook for work and, Google or Apple for home. But really leveraging a digital calendar to make everything we have to do with our time visual so that we can see it all, we can plan more realistically, we can reduce the mental load, we can understand what we have capacity for, and also know when our capacity is full and when we can push back or evaluate new opportunities. And so that's what it is, high level overview. I kind of think of it in my own head as I walk clients through like four chapters. So the first chapter is really taking the invisible load that so often we carry in our heads, only not in a calendar, not on our to-do list, and making it visual. So that's usually the mornings and the evenings, showering and getting ready, helping older kids with homework and even driving between practices or figuring all that kind of stuff out. Like all the stuff that we so often just hold in our head, meal planning, when you walk a dog, when you feed a dog, all this kind of stuff usually never makes it into the calendar, never makes it onto to-do list, and we just manage in our head. But if you actually lay it all out, one, you lighten that mental load so much, but also you see that it takes up hours of your day. And so you might have been looking at a white calendar thinking you had, 10 hours of time to do the one-off things that you need to do today, when in reality you had 6 hours because so much of that time was taken up by the repetitive stuff we do every day and discount. So that's one of the first steps is really setting up the technology and then digging into the personal invisible load and getting it out of our heads. The next chapter is for people who work outside the home is really digging into doing similar stuff at work. Email. It takes up likely 3 hours or more of our days every single day, and yet we usually don't calendar time to process email. And I'm not saying you have to calendar 3 solid hours, but at least a solid hour in there if you have 3 hours of email is smart to account for. And then we do that on the repetitive work type stuff. We dig into that, and every job's different, so that can look different. But email, running meetings more efficiently, things like that. Again, those kind of more invisible, repetitive work things. And then in chapter 3, we dig into the to-do list side of things, the one-offs, and they can be one-off tasks, but they can also be those massive projects that you might be dealing with, and that's both work and personal. And so we dig into how to break down projects and build out a game plan in the calendar so that you have a game plan to see how things get done over time. But also, when you stack it up with all those invisible to-dos we talked about and all the breakdowns of your other projects, to me, that was the game-changing part where suddenly I had more concrete data to understand my capacity and my workload. Because I was practicing law before I used the system, people would swing by and be like, "Do you have the bandwidth to take this on or the capacity to take this on?" I was like, "I don't know. I'm pretty sure I'm drowning, but I don't really know." And I certainly don't have the data to back me up if I tell you that I'm drowning. And so I would just keep saying yes. And when you can get this more objective clarity around your workload, you're more empowered to have those decisions and make those decisions and stand up for yourself in those scenarios. And then the final chapter here, I know I've been blathering on, is planning. And
Oh,
I teach a lot of planning sessions. The main one is a weekly planning session. And I will be honest, to me, a solid planning session takes about 2 hours of time each week. It's an opportunity to really look backwards. Did I get everything done? Check in on all the channels where, to-dos fly at you throughout the week, gather up those to-dos, calendar them out into the future, all sorts of things, and then smooth out the next 2 weeks. And really, whether you use a system like the Bright Method or a different system, the system is only so good as if everything makes it into the system. And so, like for me, the calendar only works and you can trust it and rely on it if you know that everything is in there. And at the same time, it is not realistic in real time to get everything into the system. Like every time you get a Slack message or an email with an ask, it would derail your day if you had to constantly be putting those into the calendar at the right time. And so that planning session is really an opportunity to look up, gather all the things, plot them out, smooth out the next 2 weeks, and get that clarity. And I love doing it before the weekend. I really advocate like a Thursday or Friday planning session so that you can close those loops and get that clarity going into your weekend so that you can enjoy it more and not just have it looming over you all weekend and get that clarity right before you go back to work.
Right. Okay. There's so much there, obviously, in your 4 chapters, but so much of it resonates with me, resonates with the things I do help my clients with too, because this comes about, right? When you're trying to accomplish make any change in your life, any lifestyle change, you have to understand the steps to doing that and how much
Yeah.
time all those steps do take. And we don't consider that.
Yes.
And I know it frequently happens in a session with a client where I'll have her break it down. She says, "This sounds ridiculous." Like she says, "I could have thought of this." I said, "Yeah, but we don't think of it on our own sometimes. And we have to think about it, get very granular about things,
Yes.
planning to even pack your bag or set out your clothes the night before and getting ready to make sure that workout happens. What are the steps to do that?" So I love this method in that you think about these things ahead of time. And, like you said, it's a week or 2 weeks even ahead of time where you sit down. I love that it's 2 hours. I
Yeah.
think a lot of times we think, oh, I'll just take 5 minutes and do this, but you can't really go through it all in 5 minutes. You need the time to really give yourself a chance to think of all the things you've got to do. And I
Yep.
guess a lot of it's repetitive, like you said, when you think about that first chapter where you're thinking about that invisible stuff that's happening all the time, like feeding the dog and getting ready for work and driving to work and all of these things. Yes, a lot of it's repetitive, and I guess it just shows up every week. You just keep putting that in. But some of
Yeah.
it is very different every week, right?
And I do want to throw out there that not those things don't have to happen at the same time every day. I don't think in reality they do. And I just want to clarify that a lot of this is not to build out a rigid schedule that you live and die by. It's more like let's get everything that we think we're doing with our time out of our head into a system that can help us see it, see how it all interacts, see how it plays. And then as schedules shift and change, you just drag that. I mean, to me, that's one of the huge perks of a digital calendar versus paper is that you just drag and drop then. You rearrange your day, subtly even, but in important ways as life changes. And I just want to throw that out there that like my husband's an ER physician. Every day in our house looks different because his shifts are all over the place. He's sleeping all day long, or he's coming home at 2 a.m. He's helping with kids, he's not helping with kids. There's no rhythm in our life, really. And so some people can hear this and be like, that would never work for me because I don't have any rhythm. And I completely get it. It's just almost think of these time blocks as default building blocks you get to play with. So you're not reinventing the wheel every day and being like, what do I do in the mornings? How does this all come together? And to me, I could not manage our life with his schedule and 2 little kids and all this kind of stuff if I was trying to do all this in my head. So that I just want to really emphasize that for people that it's not rigid. To do this, it doesn't require you do things at the same time every day. I don't think that's realistic. Like the flexibility in this is really key for it to work.
Yeah, I think that's really great that you mentioned that because yes, you can put these time blocks in, but they don't have to stay exactly where they are. It doesn't, you still have to feed the dog every day, but they might be
Yeah.
at slightly different times every day, depending on
Yeah.
what's happening, right? If your spouse is around to help you out, if the kids are doing it, there's all kinds of
Yeah.
things, but I love the flexibility.
And I think that's for some people it can feel silly. Like I love calendaring my meals. That's not because I mean I do not need a reminder to eat every day. I'm usually like, but what's helpful or even like a dog walk is that you see it then and then when something conflicts, you then can move things around. So for me, for example, today I had a noon to 1 call, and then I had this call at 1 o'clock. By calendaring my lunch, I could see, whoa, I got to eat at like 11 a.m. or 11:30, and I wouldn't have maybe thought about it then, but now I see that so that you aren't dealing with a very hangry me, which is like no good for anyone. And it just helps you see that. Like same with the dog walk. If you're like, oh, I'm not going to be home from 4 to 8 because of kids' activities today, and that might be an anomaly, or maybe it's not. But if it were in that scenario, you're like, oh, I need to walk the dog earlier, and it just helps you issue spot those things that sometimes we don't see until too late, and then we beat ourselves up for them.
Yeah, and I think that's what it does too. It gives you an appreciation for all that you do. You don't really, a lot of times the ladies I work with, they'll beat themselves up for not getting things done. And then we go through all the things they did and like, yeah, okay, well, we have to appreciate all of this, all these other things that you were doing
Yeah.
that you weren't accounting for. So let's start accounting for those things. They're not nothing.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's really important we get an appreciation for all we do
Yeah.
because like you said, that mental load is there. We carry it in our minds and it's invisible. So
Yep.
nobody appreciates it. We don't appreciate it, and nobody else for sure is going to appreciate it. But when we get it down into a calendar and we can see it, and maybe others can see it, it's, yeah,
Absolutely.
so much more powerful.
Absolutely. And I was kind of laughing because I've had a client or a woman, I can't remember, she said, she was like, one of the best things I've learned from you is that it does not, in fact, take me 0 minutes to get out of the house. And I was like, yeah. And that's just, if you extrapolate that out for everything, that is the point is that, I just did think that we as humans are terrible at estimating. And sometimes it takes seeing it in the calendar, seeing that it's taking you longer, extending blocks out, and just embracing the reality of how long things take so that you give yourself that breathing space that I think we all crave, but then also can get creative about what does that mean? If I only have time to do these things in one morning and I can't do these other things, what does that mean? And solve for those things creatively on the front end instead of every day beating ourselves up and getting frustrated for not accomplishing everything we wanted.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's really important. We have to stop beating ourselves up for those things. And what I've also found is that, like you just said, we're not great at estimating time. And I have clients who are underestimators and I'm an overestimator. Like I can see there's different characteristics of people, but I tend to always be early for everything because I overestimate the time it's going to take me to get there and which is good because I'm always pretty much on time for everything. I'm always early for everything. Whereas I have clients who are always late for everything because they just didn't give everything like maybe a buffer on things. So do
Yeah.
you advise putting a buffer on certain things? How does that work?
Yeah, I think that there are a couple of things I work on with women on helping address underestimating in particular. Um, the first is this sounds really basic, but sometimes the basic things are very useful, is, particularly for new things that you're not sure how long it will take, doubling or tripling the estimate. It sounds super basic, but I would rather you find bonus time than feel like you're running behind. So that's just one very basic one. The next one is to really break things down into bite-sized steps. I just using an example from my attorney days, I might be like, I need to reply to an opposition brief. And I think it's going to take me 10 hours to write this somewhat shorter reply. So I will calendar 5 2-hour blocks in my calendar. And like, that's it. If I actually broke down this, and so just to be clear, like I've time blocked to a degree, and that's how some people run time blocking. But if I really break down everything that goes into that, I need to read that opposition brief. I need to pull the cases they cite and read those. I need to do my own legal research. I need to outline it and maybe run it by a partner or clear it by a client. I need to draft it. I need to send it to the partner. I need to get their reviews. I need to leave time in case they make major changes. I need to put together all the exhibits, the decks. I mean, I need to polish, I need to serve it, I need to file it, like all this kind of stuff. Then I estimate how long each of those steps take. I might be like, I'm going to need like 25 to 30 hours for this. And it's just an example of I think, and I don't know why, our brains are better at estimating smaller things than bigger things. Not perfectly, but better. And so that's one thing I encourage clients on is like really break it down and then estimate how long each of those things. Over time, you'll get better at it, but even for new things, it's still new to me and I still do this and then also double or triple my estimates sometimes. But that is very, very useful is to just really get into the action steps that you have to take and estimate from there.
Yeah, I love that because that's what I say to my clients too. If they have in their calendar, they're going to the gym for an hour, right? That's very nebulous because there's so many things that go into getting ready to go to the gym,
Yep.
and then getting to the gym, being
Yep.
at the gym, and getting out of the gym, changing all these things, right? And then like getting
Absolutely.
back into your life after, right? There's so many steps that we can't say going to the gym just takes an hour. It
Absolutely.
takes a lot of other time that we're not accounting for.
Yeah.
So that's really good.
And what I love about this is like, once you're realistic about the amount of time things take, not only will you hopefully be able to do it, without running late and that stress, but it also changes the math in what you do. Right now I go to Orange Theory one time a week, and some people might be like, one time, like, what's even the point? And I'm like, well, the point is one, I haven't run in 8 years because I was having kids, and like, that's probably the most I'm going to do right now. But a 1 hour class really takes like 2 hours of my day by the time I drive there. I park, and get ready and get my water and get all the things and then shower and need decompression time because I just ran forever. And like all these things that then I might have, previous me might have been like, I can do it 3 times a week. And I would have burnt myself out, never gone, gotten frustrated and defeated and like just wasted money, beat myself up more, all that versus when I can be like, this is a 2 hour commitment on the whole. That changes what I sign up for. And now I feel really good about myself because I go every week. I do it. I do some at home workouts too, but like that's my main event. And that's what's realistic for my chapter of life because also I'm seeing it along with everything else in my calendar and being like, yeah, that's what I have time for right now. And I'm setting myself up to follow through and move the needle there. And then I can build if I want, but who knows? It doesn't, or I supplement with more at home things. More my point on this rambling personal thing is that by being realistic and embracing reality about what these things take, you make more informed, accurate decisions about your time and you set yourself up to do well with it.
Oh yeah, no, that is so good. Okay, I love all of this, and ultimately, I think what this does, which is what I mean, the women I serve, stress is a huge issue. Stress actually, and I know you're younger than this, but stress exacerbates a lot of perimenopausal and menopausal symptoms. So when we've got stress, especially this constant stress in our lives, right? That's always there. And usually, I think a lot of it is caused because of this mental load that we are carrying around that we're not dealing with. That in your method, you deal with this. And so, in doing so, that's how I see you reduce the stress.
Yeah,
Would you agree with that? Yeah.
absolutely. I think that the reduced mental load is huge. A lot of it also comes down to workload, whether it's work outside the home, work at home, the tension between the two. There's usually an overload issue going on to some degree. So we work on that, and obviously that has a bearing on stress. I've also been surprised that, there are other ways it helps stress too. I think when we so often crave downtime and real relaxation, but we never get it because, at least for me, past me, as I said, I kind of knew I was underwater as a lawyer, but I didn't really know how to articulate that and get the support. The system helps with that for sure because it gives you the data. But also because of those feelings, I could never just chill out. And this was before kid. I mean, as I said, early bloomer here, like before kids, before all of it, I was at this point. And part of it was I was like, I don't know if I can get all this done. I don't know if I can get this done. And definitely not if I take a break tonight, like a real break tonight. So like my best shot of getting all this done is like constantly working. And then if I tried to relax, I was like, I should be working because that's the only way I'm going to potentially get all this done. Where when you can lay it out over time in this way and see, okay, it can get done and my workload is reasonable and I can defend it in a great way. And I can see I can take a break tonight and I still have the time to get it done. And I've accounted for curveballs and all these things still, and I know I can get it done. Then it's just a visual way that actually lets your brain be like, okay, and you can relax. And I just think getting the ability to relax occasionally obviously has a great impact on stress. And the final thing I'll say too with stress that I've been surprised with, I didn't see this as a potential outcome, that some of my clients' biggest wins are better relationships with their partners, where they're, and you were intimating this too, is like when you make all this visual in your calendar, you can show someone else what you're dealing with in a much, again, more visual, objective way that is not, I am overwhelmed, I need your help. It's more, here's what I'm managing. This is why if you took these three things off my plate every single week, like on an ongoing basis, you own these now, this would free up my life here. Doesn't work every time, but I would say that I'm so pleasantly surprised that so many partners of women I work with want to help. They just weren't fully aware. We can talk about whether that's right or wrong, but I'm a realist and we just go with reality here. They get them on the same page and they can understand it more and they're more motivated to help. And that's massive in all of our lives, I think. So that's been a big one for reducing stress within women as well.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And I see your lawyer brain working where you're showing the evidence, right?
Yes.
You've got to gather all the data, the evidence, and then you show your partner that this is what I'm dealing with. These are the real facts. And yeah, yeah. And like you said, we can argue, why am I the one who has to do all
Yep.
this? But yeah, okay, we can go into that. But ultimately, it's your stress. If you want to lower it, own it, and, do this. Just
Yep.
plan this out. I think this is it's not a huge commitment, but for the clients that I know that have used this or something like it, some sort of plan at least, it just drops their stress to a completely different level. It's just so, like, their shoulders relax. They realize, like you said, they have time for themselves
Hmm.
that they didn't think they had. And that in fact it's actually necessary. I think it's really necessary to put those things in your calendar. Like, if you need a 2 hour break for yourself sometime during the week, put it in there. Like, you've
Yeah.
got to do that, right? So I think this is like necessary for the vast majority of women who think we're great multitaskers, and we've been told we're great multitaskers, but I don't think we are. We're
No,
human. We're not great multitaskers.
no, I think there's a study that shows that only 2.5% of the population can multitask. So there's like a pretty good shot you can. And I'm saying that to myself too, that, we can context, like, or I think it's like, I forget what the right word is. Like we're moving between tasks quickly, but our brain really can only focus on one thing at a time.
Yes, and I think that's true. And I think if you're going to get any satisfaction out of anything, you can only focus on one thing at a
Yeah.
time. And yeah. So I was just wondering if you have any client stories that you could share with us that would be interesting. And we could see
Yeah.
your method at work.
Yeah, I mean the outcomes can look so different by person. I would say that what's fun, I was thinking about this ahead of time, is just, for some people, getting the clarity on the work front of the workload and then also their capacity, which has a relation to, home and personal life, has allowed them to articulate and advocate for themselves for promotions and raises and things along those lines. What's fun though is it can also look very different, where I have some clients realize this organization or this industry is never going to give me the life that I want. But I think that is, even though it's not like puppies and rainbows, it's it's such an important moment because people can be like, it's not a me problem. It's an industry problem. It's a workload problem. It's this organization, but it's not a me problem. And obviously that's important for like our own self image and worth and feelings about ourselves, but it's also when you think it's a self problem, you try and solve yourself. You're like, I need more discipline if I just worked harder. But when you realize, no, this is my organization or this is this industry, then you can get creative and solve for that. Do I want to move to a different organization? Do I want to switch industries? Do I want to scale back to part-time and see if I can make that work in this industry? Whatever it might be, but you start problem solving in a way that you might not have before. Um, but I've had clients where their biggest wins, as I said, are relationships with partners or supporting friends. And then I got an email actually yesterday that I figured I would share a little bit because it's like most relevant for this. Um, I'm just going to read it because it makes sense as it goes. As she
Yeah.
said, you have no joke changed my life. My stress level is massively decreased. My burnout is next to zero. And I've been on time to, in all capitals, every appointment and meeting since I started the program. As an ADHD woman with perimenopause, that was basically unheard of before your program. Now I arrive calm, collected, and knowing everything I need is in my calendar. It's just changed the way I operate in every possible way. My house is cleaner. My friendships are thriving. I don't need to keep reading, but I just loved, I mean, coming into this and this woman's like, I am in perimenopause and this wasn't working. There are wins can look different to every person that goes through the program, but that's the type of result that I strive for and that like lights me up and like makes me cry. So that those are like the different wins that can come out of this. And I just find it so fascinating that we talk about calendars and tech strategies and how to calendar and what to go in there and then the wins and the ripple effects of this are can go so far beyond it that I just think everything comes back to time that if you can manage your time in a way that feels like a right fit for you, the ripple effects are so surprising.
Okay. Well, I just want to congratulate you because I think that's such a beautiful testament to the work that you do and that you should definitely keep that somewhere so you see it often.
Yeah, thank you.
And all those beautiful emails, I think it's important to keep track
Absolutely.
of that, right? Because this is what you do. This is what, like you said, it sounds so technical and so kind of boring to put things in a calendar, to plan these kind of unsexy things. But in the end, you end up with a life that just feels so much lighter and brighter and things are getting better like it because not just because you planned your schedule but because it affects everything else like you said that ripple effect it does it gets sent out to everything in your life and
Yeah.
you just feel so much better about everything and I think that is so key so and it's just taking that pressure off yourself that it isn't a you problem and I think and I kind of remind people too that this is really recent history that we've been in this situation where we've got so many things to handle. Like it was never like that in history
Yeah.
for any of us humans, but because of technology, because of everything that we can handle, we're handling all things all the time.
Yeah.
And it's not realistic.
No.
So I think it's super important to do what you're advising, which is to sit and think about it. Like actually think about it. Don't just blindly say yes to things. Don't just blindly do things, but think about it and take time. Take those 2 hours to do it. I just think as a minimum, that is required in order to feel better in your life and know that it's not you and see it for in front of you that it is not you.
Yeah.
This is a lot of just being unrealistic demands of society that we have.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, I remember as a young attorney, as I said, feeling overwhelmed. And I remember just thinking somewhere in my head, I guess, if it weren't reasonable, if the overall workload weren't reasonable, they wouldn't ask it of me. And it took me a while to be like, no, no one has any idea of what's on your plate. Like I was working for multiple partners, but candidly, even if I was only working for one boss, they don't know everything they've given you. They don't know how it's stacked up. And that's just in the work context. I mean, much less like what life hands you. And I think that's really important to realize is that don't assume everything flying at you is doable, at least all at the same time. And I say this it sounds harsh. I mean it more empowering is like we are the adults. We are in charge of deciding what's reasonable for us. And so we have to do that. And to me, that was very empowering and freeing to be like, oh, it's up to me to figure this out. And like I needed a system. I didn't know how to do that on my own. I need a system to see it visually and understand it. But once I have that, then it's up to me to decide. And that's kind of cool. I don't know if I know that that could probably be daunting to hear from some people, but to me, that's really fun because then I can be like, what do I want my life to feel like? What would have to be true for my life to feel that way? How do I use that to guide what I say yes and no to? And obviously, I'm a realist and I know I've been in big law. I understand that it's not all in our control, but it is more in our control than we think. And that's fun to play with within those confines.
I totally agree. I think that there's so much in our control, and we don't think it is until we actually give ourselves a chance to sit down and really look at it, right?
Yeah.
There is so much we do control, and it's in the decisions that we're making every day. And you can make much better decisions when you know what the current situation of your life is. When
Yeah.
you've got it all on the calendar, you see it, you know, and it's so empowering. I just think we can all take our own power back by doing this. And yeah, I was like you, I was a young engineer, not a lawyer, but things were coming at me. And I was, again, like you, assuming that this was all kind of just normal. They're not going to give me more than I can handle,
Yeah.
but they do. And yeah, and you just don't know. Everybody takes a different amount of time to do everything. So you have to know you and understand you. So I think this process really helps with that. And so what's would you advise as one small practical change that somebody could make to help them feel lighter, more spacious, less stressed?
Yeah. I mean, I think an easy thing to do that's kind of enlightening. I don't know if it's fun. To me, it's fun, but enlightening is thinking about those mornings and those evenings and just starting to time block out in a digital calendar, preferably, but if you're really into paper, try it in paper, just for like the next week or two. When do I get up? When do I get shower and get ready? When do I work out? When do I drive to and from places? Again, when do I do homework with kids if I have them, walk dogs if I have them, feed, just all the little things that you're running in your head and start layering them out. The digital calendar is beautiful for this and that you can just, repeat it every day or every weekday or every Monday, Thursday, Friday or whatever it is. Again, knowing you can move them around, you're not locking yourself into anything at a certain time, but you just drag them around. It's interesting. I think that people think that it's very like micromanagey and then are surprised at the feelings that come out of it. And so that's just an easy place to start is those mornings and evenings, not at work. It's more in your control. Play with them and then just see how it feels and play it out. Even if it feels weird for a day or two, just kind of stick with it for like a week or two and it might be fascinating to see what it does to the mental load, what it does to your plans. And what I hope is it also, you might be like, oh, I'm trying to do 2 hours of things every morning, and that might explain why my mornings feel that way. Be realistic. If it takes you 45 minutes to shower and get ready and you wish it took you 30, calendar 45. Let's just be realistic and see how things are going because then you can solve the problems and be like, well, what if I showered the night before? Or what if I washed my hair less? And these things sound silly, but they matter how we kick off our day. Um, and so anyway, I would just calendar out the things that are more in your control, the mornings, the evenings, assuming you maybe work a traditional job or whatever it is, and see how that feels and see if that helps you feel lighter.
Mhm. I know it does. But I think it's so key, like you said, it sounds like micromanagement. It sounds like, oh my God, that's like so daunting to put all this out. But when you do it, it is so freeing. It is
Yeah.
the opposite of what you think it will be. So I suggest to anybody listening to do exactly what Kelly just said and
Yeah.
experiment. Why not just experiment and map out your mornings and evenings and just try it out for a couple of weeks, see how it goes. But
Yeah.
I know from experience with myself, with my clients, that it's a game changer.
Yeah.
It's the opposite of what you think it's going to be.
I know. I always think I hear from some people being like, that's going to clutter up my calendar. Like, I don't like it, or my calendar is going to look so busy. And it will. I mean, it will look busier than you're used to. I teach tech strategies to make it a little bit easier, but it will clutter up your calendar. but it will lighten up your mind. And like you decide what's more important. Like, do you want your calendar weighed down by this, or do you want you and your brain weighed down by this? And to me, the answer is clear for me.
Yes, me too. All right, Kelly. So there's a question I always ask my guests, and I'm going to ask you. So, what has been so far the best part of getting older for you?
Yeah, I think that so I'm 40. I have a 7-year-old and a 4-year-old. So I know I can only speak to as old as I'm getting, but I will say that right now I think we're in a sweet spot before activities take over too much, that I just really like the slower pace of life right now. Life has been very busy with lots of different reasons and moves and all sorts of stuff, but I think as I get older, and especially as I think back to my 20s and going out and staying up late and all this kind of stuff, I just love being 40 and being a homebody and going to bed early and not drinking. It's just, I loved that in my 20s and I love this in my 40s. And that's been just a really nice place. I feel like I'm very kind of comfortable with who I am, know what's important to me and what I want. And my life is, it's easier to align my life to that right now. I'm sure it will change again as activities ramp up and all that kind of stuff, but I'm soaking that in right now.
I think that's a beautiful answer. I don't think I've ever had that answer before on the podcast. So I really appreciate that. I think embrace this time of your life, like
Yeah.
this quiet, this beautiful, kind of more relaxed time. I think that's a very smart thing to do. And why not? I mean, I'm totally with you on that. I love, and I'm in my 50s now, and I am embracing too. My kids have just left home. I miss them, but I am embracing like, wow, like my load just, not that
Yeah.
they were very heavy at the end there, but just like not having them here is actually quite light.
Yeah. You get to like
Lovely.
reclaim your time a bit more. Yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, absolutely. So I love your answer. And finally, if the women in my audience want to connect with you, they want to reach out to you, find out what you do, where can they do that?
Sure thing. I am most active on Instagram. If you search Kelly Nolan on there, you should find me. I also have a free 5-day program if you want to check it out, because I do think, time management is so personal. I don't think everyone should be using the Bright method. I think that it is really something you should kick the tires on. So if you're interested in that, it's at kellynolan.com/refresh. And that's just a free 5-day program that walks you through a lot of what we've talked about already, but just kind of helps bring it to life a little bit more.
Okay, I love free programs. That's wonderful. So I will include the links for those things in the show notes. So if you're listening, you can go to the show notes, get Kelly's free 5-day program. And thank you so much, Kelly. This was
Thank
so
you.
great. I
Yeah, thank you
loved
for
it.
having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much.